The Great Hall floated in space above Vexra Prime, a massive station where the most powerful beings in the galaxy gathered. Inside, 30 different alien races sat in their designated sections. The Vexrans dominated the center with their tall insect bodies covered in shining armor. Their leader stood 12 feet high, his 4 arms crossed as he addressed the council. Behind him, the Thornids glowed softly. These crystal beings reflected light in beautiful patterns, but everyone knew they were dangerous. Their ships could destroy entire fleets. The meeting had one purpose. Pirates were attacking trade routes near the Outer Rim. Merchant vessels disappeared every week. The council needed to act. "We will send our battle fleet," the Vexran commander announced. His mandibles clicked with confidence. 12 capital ships. Each one capable of planetary bombardment. A Thornid representative chimed her approval, the sound like bells in a cathedral. "We offer 8 of our dreadnoughts. Our shields have never been penetrated." The reptilian Kasser delegate hissed his pleasure. "Our plasma cannons will turn those pirates into vapor. We bring 10 cruisers to this coalition." One by one, the great powers of the galaxy pledged their forces. Hundreds of warships. Thousands of fighters. The combined might of civilizations that had conquered their home systems millennia ago. Then, the doors opened again. 3 humans walked in. The hall didn't fall silent. That would suggest respect. Instead, a low murmur of amusement rippled through the chamber. The humans were small compared to most species present. They wore simple dark blue uniforms with minimal decoration. No ceremonial weapons. No honor guards. Just 3 people who looked tired from their journey. Captain Hyun led them. His face showed his age with lines around his eyes and gray in his short hair. He walked with the steady gait of someone who had spent decades on ship decks. Behind him came Commander Yuna, younger but with the same serious expression. She carried a data tablet against her chest. Lieutenant Miho followed, his eyes scanning the chamber as if calculating firing solutions out of habit. They reached the speaking platform. Hyun placed both hands on the podium and looked up at the assembled council. "Earth offers its support to the coalition," he said. His voice was calm and clear. "We will contribute 3 destroyers, 2 frigates, and 1 carrier. All vessels are ready for immediate deployment." The silence lasted 3 seconds. Then, the laughter began. It started with the Kasser delegation. Their hissing laughter sounded like steam escaping from pipes. The Thornids followed, their crystalline bodies resonating with mocking tones. Even the dignified Vexrans couldn't help themselves. Their mandibles clicked in rhythm as the commander's shoulders shook. 6 ships. A Thornid envoy's voice carried across the hall. "My personal merchant fleet numbers more than that." The Vexran commander approached the platform. He towered over Hyun, looking down with what might have been pity. "Captain, we appreciate Earth's symbolic gesture. But, perhaps you misunderstand the scale of this operation. We are deploying battle fleets. Your contribution is barely a patrol group." More laughter echoed through the chamber. A Kasser military advisor slithered forward. "I command a destroyer squadron of 20 vessels. You offer 3. Perhaps humans should focus on activities better suited to your capabilities. Mining, perhaps. Agriculture." The laughter grew louder. Delegates from smaller races joined in, grateful to not be the weakest link for once. A few species that had never even heard of humanity before looked confused, wondering why these small beings were even present. Yuna's jaw tightened. Her hand gripped the tablet hard enough that her knuckles went white. Miho's expression didn't change, but he took half a step forward before catching himself. Hyun remained completely still. He waited for the laughter to die down. It took almost a full minute. "We understand the scale," he finally said. Our offer stands. The Vexeran commander waved a dismissive claw. Very well. Earth's fleet will be appreciated. He clearly struggled to keep his mandibles from clicking in amusement. We will assign you to patrol Sector 7. It's quite safe. Minimal pirate activity. You should be comfortable there. The council moved on to logistics. Fleet formations. Communication protocols. Supply lines. The humans were largely ignored. When they did speak to offer tactical suggestions, they were politely dismissed. A Thorned admiral actually thanked Hyun for his enthusiasm, in a tone one might use with a child. The meeting lasted 4 more hours. By the end, the coalition fleet structure was clear. The Vexerans would lead the primary battle group. The Thorneds would command the second wave. The Caesar would handle orbital strikes. Down the chain of command it went, each species given responsibility based on their fleet size and military reputation. Earth's tiny contingent was listed under Auxiliary Support, Sector 7. As the council adjourned, the humans gathered their materials. Around them, alien officers chatted and boasted about their vessels. A group of Caesar military planners walked past, and one made a comment in their language. The others hissed with laughter. The translator in Miho's ear caught the meaning. Perhaps the humans can guard the supply depot. Even they couldn't mess that up. They walked back toward the docking bay in silence. The station corridors were busy with delegates and their entourages. More than once, the humans had to step aside to let larger species pass. No one acknowledged them. They were invisible now, their moment of mockery over. At the shuttle bay entrance, Yuna finally spoke. Her voice was tight with controlled anger. They treat us like children bringing toys to a real fight. They don't know, Miho added quietly. They've never seen what we can do. Hyun stopped walking. He turned to look back at the council chamber, though it was far behind them now. His face showed no anger, no frustration. Just calm certainty. They will, he said simply. The shuttle trip back to their ship took 20 minutes. Through the viewport, they could see the massive alien warships docked at the station. A Vexeran battlecruiser stretched for 3 kilometers, its hull bristling with weapons. A Thorned dreadnought glowed like a small sun, its crystalline armor refracting light into rainbow patterns. The Caesar fleet section looked like a nest of serpents, their ships angular and aggressive. Further out, almost at the edge of the station's defensive perimeter, sat the human vessels. They were smaller, yes. Sleeker. Built for speed and efficiency rather than intimidation. The carrier looked almost delicate compared to the alien capital ships. Yuna stared at them through the window. 6 ships against the galaxy's judgment. We've faced worse odds, Hyun replied. Their shuttle docked with the carrier. As they walked through the airlock, a young ensign saluted. Captain, Commander, Lieutenant. Welcome back. How did the council meeting go? Hyun handed him his data pad. About as expected. We have patrol duty in Sector 7. Prepare the fleet for deployment. I want full combat readiness in 48 hours. The ensign looked confused. Combat readiness, sir. For patrol duty. Always be ready, Hyun said. It was clearly something he'd said many times before. Dismissed. As the ensign hurried away, Yuna turned to her captain. You think something's going to happen? It wasn't a question. Hyun looked out at the stars through the carrier's main viewport. I think the galaxy is about to learn an important lesson. Humans don't measure fleet strength the same way they do. How do we measure it? Miho asked. Hyun smiled slightly. It wasn't a pleasant expression. By results. The human fleet hung in space near the Helios Junction. 3 weeks had passed since the council meeting. Around them, civilian traffic moved in predictable patterns. Cargo haulers carrying grain and metals. Passenger liners filled with families. Mining vessels returning from the asteroid fields. All peaceful. All routine. Captain Hyun stood on the bridge of the TDF Indomitable, watching the main display. His crew worked at their stations with quiet efficiency. No wasted movement. No unnecessary chatter. These were professionals who had served together for years. "Run it again," Hyun ordered. Lieutenant Miho brought up the combat simulation on the tactical display. For the 15th time that week, the crew practiced responding to an enemy attack. Warnings blared. Officers called out target coordinates. The ship's weapons systems cycled through firing solutions at imaginary threats. At the weapons console, a young officer named Dane tracked targets with impressive speed. His fingers danced across the controls as he managed point defense systems and offensive arrays simultaneously. When the simulation ended, his score had improved by 3%. "Better," Hyun said. "But, not good enough. Reset and run it again." In engineering, Lieutenant Jaiwan pushed her team through equipment stress tests. She made them reroute power through damaged systems. Practice emergency repairs. Work in simulated zero gravity with half the lights off. Her crew complained but obeyed. They trusted her. She'd kept ships running through worse conditions than any simulation could create. Aboard the destroyer Soul's Pride, Commander Yuna drilled her crew just as hard. Her ship was smaller and faster than the carrier. It needed to be. Destroyers were the knife fighters of space combat. Close range. High speed. Precision strikes. Her helmsman practiced evasive maneuvers until he could dodge incoming fire in his sleep. The other species liaison officers watched all this with confusion. A Kasser tactical observer asked Yuna why they were preparing for combat when the sector was completely safe. She smiled and said nothing. The Kasser didn't understand. How could he? His people had never needed to be ready for the unexpected. They were apex predators in their region of space. They'd never been the underdog. Humans had been underdogs for their entire history. On the 22nd day of patrol, Miho was reviewing sensor logs when something caught his attention. A faint distortion at the edge of their scanning range. It lasted only a moment, then disappeared. Probably nothing. Space was full of random anomalies. But he flagged it anyway and kept watching. 3 days later, the sensors screamed. Miho's board lit up like a festival. His hands moved across the controls, confirming what he was seeing. Then, confirming again because it couldn't be right. But it was. "Captain," his voice was controlled but urgent. "Multiple hyperspace signatures. Bearing 273 Mark IV. Range, 20 light minutes and closing." Hyun moved to the tactical station. "How many?" "Still resolving. At least 20 contacts." "No, 25. 30. Miho's voice dropped. "Sir, these are capital ship signatures." The bridge fell silent. Hyun studied the display. The ships were big. Very big. And they were moving fast, dropping out of hyperspace in a combat spread formation. "IFF codes?" Hyun asked. "Negative on all known signatures. Running database comparison now." Miho's screen flickered as the computer searched. Then, it found a match. The color drained from his face. "Captain. Computer identifies them as Void Ravager configurations. Confidence 97%. Someone on the bridge gasped. Even humans knew about the Void Ravagers. They were one of the oldest nightmares in the galaxy. A nomadic fleet that appeared without warning, destroyed everything in their path, and vanished again. No one knew where they came from. No one had ever successfully negotiated with them. And no one had ever defeated them. Communications, Hyun ordered. Get me the Council fleet. Priority 1. The communications officer's hands shook slightly as she worked. Channel open, sir. What came through was chaos. Static. Screaming. Alarms. The Vexeran commander's voice cut through, distorted by interference. Under attack, half the fleet is gone, shields failing. Then, an explosion sound so loud it overloaded the speakers. Then, nothing. The communications officer tried other frequencies. She found the Thorned flagship. The crystal beings' normally musical voices were harsh with panic. Their shields, which had never been penetrated, were shattering. Their beautiful ships were dying. Miho brought up the tactical map. The main council fleet was 3 sectors away. The Ravagers had jumped right on top of them. It wasn't a battle. It was a massacre. How did they know where the fleet would be? Yuna's voice came through from the Soul's Pride. She was asking the question everyone was thinking. It didn't matter now. What mattered was the 30 Ravager warships that were now heading toward the Helios Junction. Toward the civilian stations and colony ships that couldn't run fast enough. Toward the refugee transports that had just arrived this morning. Sir, Miho said quietly. At their current speed, they'll reach the junction in 4 hours. There are 5 civilian stations in their path. 16,000 people total. The nearest council fleet is 8 hours away. Hyun looked at the numbers. 6 human ships against 30 Ravager capital vessels. The math was simple. They had no chance. Options, he said. We can jump to safety in 30 minutes, Jaiwan's voice came through from engineering. The fleet is at full readiness. We'd take minimal damage. Yuna spoke from the Soul's Pride. We could escort some of the civilian ships. Maybe save 2,000 people. Miho added tactical data. If we engage the Ravagers, we might by an hour before being destroyed. The civilians could evacuate most stations in that time. The bridge waited. Every eye was on Captain Hyun. In the background, they could hear the civilian channels. Parents calling for their children. Station managers coordinating evacuations. The fear in those voices was real. Those were real people who would die if the Ravagers reached them. The Kasser liaison officer stood up from his observation post. Captain, this is insane. We must retreat. Save the ships we have. This is not our fight. Hyun ignored him. He turned to his communications officer. Signal all human vessels. Battle stations. Formation Epsilon. We hold the line. The Kasser's scales turned pale. You're going to fight them? All of them? Have you lost your mind? This is suicide. Then, leave, Hyun said calmly. The escape pods are marked. The Kasser stared at him for 3 long seconds. Then, he ran. Actually ran toward the escape pod bays. They could hear his panicked hissing echoing through the corridors. A minute later, sensors showed a pod launching from the Indomitable, heading away from the junction at maximum speed. No one on the bridge said anything. No one even looked surprised. All ships reporting ready, sir, the communications officer said. Commander Yuna confirms Soul's Pride is combat ready. The frigates are moving into position. Destroyers are charging weapons. On the main display, the Ravager fleet grew larger. Their ships were ugly things. All sharp angles and random protrusions. They didn't follow any aesthetic sense humans understood. They looked like they'd been designed to inspire fear, and they succeeded. The flagship was the worst. The computer labeled it as the Eternal Maw. It stretched for 5 kilometers, covered in weapons ports and strange organic-looking growths. It looked alive and hungry. Miho studied the tactical data streaming in. "Sir, their shields are reading 50% stronger than anything in our database. Their weapons. I'm seeing energy signatures that shouldn't be possible. They're using some kind of reality-bending technology. Can we hurt them?" Hyun asked. Miho paused. "Unknown, sir. In theory, yes. In practice." He didn't finish the sentence. Hyun nodded. He activated the fleet-wide channel. His voice went out to every human ship. To every crew member who had trained for this moment. To the Marines who were checking their weapons. To the pilots climbing into their fighters. To the engineers who were already planning how to keep damaged systems running. "This is Captain Hyun to all vessels. In 4 hours, the enemy will reach this junction. Behind us are 16,000 civilians who cannot defend themselves. The galaxy's great powers are gone. Their fleets are burning. We are all that stands between those people and death." He paused, letting that sink in. "I will not order you to stay. This will be the hardest fight we've ever faced. The odds are against us. But, I'm staying. This carrier is staying. And, we're going to make those bastards pay for every meter of space they take. If you're with me, hold formation. If not, jump out now. No judgment. No shame." The channel was silent for 10 seconds. Then, Yuna's voice came through. "Soul's Pride holds. Destroyer Busan holds. Frigate Taegu holds." One by one, every ship reported in. Not a single vessel broke formation. Hyun felt something in his chest tighten. Pride, maybe. Or fear. Perhaps both. "Very well," he said. "All hands, this is the captain. General quarters. Battle stations. Commence evacuation operations. And, somebody get me a firing solution on that flagship." The bridge exploded into controlled chaos. Screens lit up. Alarms blared. The carrier's massive engines began powering up to combat levels. In the distance, the Ravager fleet continued its approach. Unstoppable. Inevitable. Or so they thought. The Ravager fleet emerged from hyperspace like a wound opening in space itself. Reality seemed to bend around their ships. Their hulls were dark metal covered in symbols that hurt to look at too long. Some ships had organic components fused to mechanical parts in ways that violated natural laws. They moved with purpose and malice. The flagship led them. The Eternal Maw lived up to its name. Its forward section resembled a massive jaw lined with weapons instead of teeth. Energy crackled along its hull in colors that shouldn't exist. Behind it, 29 more warships spread out in a formation designed for maximum destruction. Captain Hyun watched them approach on the main display. The human fleet had positioned itself directly between the Ravagers and the civilian stations. 1 carrier. 2 destroyers. 2 frigates. A joke compared to what was coming for them. But, on those 5 civilian stations, families were evacuating. Children held their parents' hands as they rushed toward transport ships. Station managers coordinated the exodus with remarkable calm considering the terror they must feel. They knew the human fleet was buying them time with blood. "Enemy fleet will be in weapons range in 12 minutes, Miho reported. His voice was steady but, his hands gripped the edge of his console. Still no change in their formation or speed. They're not even bothering with evasive patterns. Why would they? They outnumbered the humans 6-1. Their ships were larger. Their weapons more powerful. They'd just destroyed the combined might of the Galactic Council's finest warships. 6 human vessels were nothing but target practice. A transmission came through on all frequencies. The Ravager commander's voice filled the bridge. The computer translated it, but the malice came through clearly in any language. Small ones. Weak ones. You block our path. The voice was like grinding metal. Your courage is noted. Your stupidity is greater. Move aside. These stations are not yours. These lives are not yours. We hunt bigger prey today. Leave and live. Hyun stepped forward. He activated the transmission system. When he spoke, his voice was calm. Almost conversational. Ravager Fleet, this is Captain Hyun of the Terran Defense Force. You are ordered to stand down and withdraw from this sector immediately. Failure to comply will result in defensive action. The silence lasted 3 seconds. Then, laughter filled the channel. Not human laughter. This was the sound of something that found the concept of human resistance genuinely hilarious. It went on for almost a minute. In the background, other Ravager voices joined in. They thought this was the funniest thing they'd heard in years. When the laughter finally stopped, the commander spoke again. Defensive action. From 6 small ships. Very well, tiny ones. We accept your offer. Come. Defend. We are curious to see what you will do before you die. The channel cut off. Well, Yuna's voice came through from the soul's pride. At least we tried diplomacy. All ships, combat spread Delta, Hyun ordered. Fighter wings, launch when ready. Fire control, I want solutions on the 3 lead cruisers. Helm, bring us to attack speed. The Indomitable's engines flared to life. Around it, the other human ships moved into position with practiced precision. The destroyers spread wide, creating a triangle formation with the carrier at the rear apex. The frigates took high and low positions, ready to intercept any flanking moves. From the carrier's launch bays, fighters began streaming out. Small craft barely 20 meters long. They looked like toys compared to the Ravager capital ships. Each fighter held a pilot, a weapons system, and enough fuel for maybe 2 hours of combat. Dane sat in the cockpit of his fighter, the first to launch. His hands moved across the controls with muscle memory. Around him, his wing formed up. 12 fighters in a tight formation. Gold wing, sound off, he said into his comm. 11 voices responded. 11 pilots who knew they were flying toward overwhelming odds. But, every one of them had volunteered. Every one of them was ready. Gold wing, weapons free. Follow my lead and watch your intervals. Make every shot count. The Ravagers opened fire first. The space between the 2 fleets lit up with weapons fire. Plasma bolts the size of buildings streaked across the void. Energy beams that could cut through asteroids reached out for the human ships. Missiles that could level cities launched in swarms. Evasive. Hyun ordered. The human ships moved. Not with the slow, ponderous grace of capital ships. They moved like fighters. The destroyers especially. They could pull accelerations that would kill most alien species. Human bodies could handle more G-forces than anything else in the galaxy. It was one of humanity's few natural advantages and they used it ruthlessly. The soul's pride twisted through incoming fire like it was dancing. Commander Yuna's helmsman, a young officer named Bora, threw the destroyer into maneuvers that shouldn't be possible for a ship that size. Plasma bolts passed meters from the hull. Energy beams missed by seconds. But, some shots found their targets. The frigate Tegu took a direct hit to its port side. The shields held but, barely. Warning lights flashed across its bridge. Its captain, a grizzled veteran named Tejo, gritted his teeth and held position. Return fire, he ordered. The Tegu's rail gun spoke. Chunks of tungsten accelerated to a significant fraction of light speed. Simple physics. Simple weapons. But, at those speeds, mass became energy. The first salvo hit a Ravager cruiser's shields and shattered them. The second salvo punched through the hull and exited the other side, leaving a hole 3 meters wide. The Ravager cruiser didn't explode. It just stopped moving. Dead in space. First blood. The Ravagers realized these humans could actually hurt them. Their formation tightened. More ships focused fire on the destroyers. The volume of incoming weapons fire tripled. Shields at 60%, someone reported on the Indomitable's bridge. Forward sections taking repeated hits. Point defense, clear the missile swarms, Hyun ordered. Jaiwan, I need more power to forward shields. In engineering, Lieutenant Jaiwan was already 3 steps ahead. She rerouted power from non-essential systems. Crew quarters went dark. The mess hall shut down. Life support reduced to minimum in empty sections. Every spare watt of power went to shields and weapons. You've got 15% more, she reported. But, Captain, we're running the reactor at 110%. We can hold this for maybe an hour before we start melting things we need. 1 hour, Hyun repeated. Understood. Make it 90 minutes if you can. Dane's fighter wing reached the Ravager formation. The enemy point defense systems opened up, filling space with flak that could shred a fighter in seconds. 2 fighters exploded before they could even fire their weapons. A third lost its wing and spiraled out of control. Gold 7 and 9 are down, Dane reported, his voice tight. Gold 11 is hit. Still flying but, weapons are offline. All wings, serpentine pattern, came the order from the carrier's flight controller. Don't give them clean shots. The remaining fighters wove through the flak like needles through cloth. Dane lined up a shot on a Ravager cruiser and released his missiles. 4 warheads, each one carrying enough explosive power to level a city block. They streaked toward the target, their guidance systems locked on. The cruiser's point defense took out 2 missiles. The other 2 got through. They impacted against the hull and detonated. Armor plating shattered. Atmosphere vented into space. The cruiser listed to port, still functional but wounded. Good hit, gold lead, the flight controller said. All wings, follow his example. Pick your targets and make them count. But, the Ravagers were adapting. Their commanders weren't stupid. They'd underestimated the humans at first but, they were correcting that mistake. Half their fleet peeled off to engage the human ships directly while the other half continued toward the civilian stations. They're splitting up, Miho reported. 15 ships coming at us. 15 bypassing toward the stations. Hyun made a decision in 3 seconds. Seoul's Pride and Busan break formation. Intercept the station-bound group. We'll handle the ones here. Captain, that leaves us with 3 ships against 15, Miho said. I know. Execute the order. The 2 destroyers broke away, accelerating hard toward the Ravagers heading for the stations. That left the carrier and 2 frigates facing 15 enemy capital ships. The math was even worse now. Commander Yuna's voice came through. Seoul's Pride acknowledging. We'll stop them, sir. I know you will, Hyun replied. The Ravagers pressed their attack. Their flagship, the Eternal Maw, finally, engaged. When it fired its main weapons, space itself seemed to scream. A beam of twisted energy lanced out and hit the frigate Taegu. This time the shields didn't hold. They collapsed like paper in fire. The beam punched through the Taegu's hull, through its engines, through its reactor. The ship didn't explode. It just died. All power failed instantly. 30 seconds later, secondary explosions rippled through the hull as stored munitions cooked off. Tegu is gone, Miho said quietly. No life signs. No escape pods. Captain Tejo and his entire crew. 200 people. Gone in seconds. The bridge of the Indomitable was silent for a moment. Just one moment to acknowledge the dead. Then, they got back to work because that's what Tejo would have wanted. Target that flagship, Hyun ordered. His voice was cold now. All weapons. Fire everything we have. The Indomitable unleashed its full arsenal. Rail guns. Missiles. Energy weapons. Every weapon system the carrier possessed fired in sequence. The volume of fire was impressive for a single ship. The Ravager flagship's shields lit up as the impact struck home. But, the shields held. The flagship barely seemed to notice. Shields at 30%, came the warning. Another hit like that and, we're finished. Hyun looked at the tactical display. The Soul's Pride and Busan were engaging the second Ravager group. They were outnumbered and, taking damage, but, they were buying time. On the civilian stations, the evacuation was 60% complete. 10,000 people were safe. 6,000 still remained. They needed more time. Jaiwan, Hyun said into his comm, how much can you give me? Maximum burn. Everything we have. There was a pause. Then, Jaiwan's voice came back, and she was smiling. He could hear it even through the comm, Captain, if I route all auxiliary power to the engines, shut down everything except life support and weapons, and maybe pray to whatever gods are listening, I can give you enough thrust to make this carrier move like a destroyer. For about 10 minutes. Then, things will start melting. Do it. The Indomitable's engines flared with blue-white fire. The carrier accelerated forward, directly at the Ravager flagship. Every system on the ship screamed in protest. In engineering, warning klaxons blared as temperatures climbed past safe limits. What are you doing? Miho asked, his eyes wide. Hyun smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. Getting their attention. The Indomitable burned across space like a meteor. Behind it, the remaining frigate Gwangju struggled to keep pace. The Ravagers had expected the carrier to stay back, using its fighters and long-range weapons while staying safe. That was standard capital ship doctrine across the galaxy. Humans didn't follow standard doctrine. Target lock on the flagship's forward shield generator, Miho called out. His voice was higher than normal, but his hand stayed steady. Solution ready. All weapons, concentrated fire on that generator, Hyun ordered. Single point, maximum damage. Every weapon on the Indomitable that could bear on target fired at once. The rail guns fired tungsten rods in a stream, each one following the exact same trajectory. The missiles were programmed to impact the same 3-meter section of shield. Energy weapons focused their beams into a single point. The Ravager flagship's shields flared brilliant white where the attacks concentrated. For 3 seconds, the shields held. On the 4th second, they flickered. On the 5th, they collapsed. Just in that section. Just for a moment. But, a moment was enough. The last 3 rail gun rounds punched through the gap and hit the hull. Armor designed to withstand nuclear weapons cracked. Atmosphere vented. The flagship rocked from the impact, its smooth approach stuttering. On the bridge of the Eternal Maw, alarms finally blared. The Ravager commander stared at his displays in disbelief. These small ships had actually hurt his vessel. His flagship that had destroyed Vexeran battle groups and shattered Thornid dreadnoughts. All weapons on that carrier, he snarled. I want it obliterated. The entire Ravager formation shifted focus. 14 capital ships turned their weapons toward the Indomitable. The amount of firepower they prepared to unleash could destroy a small moon. Evasive! Hyun shouted. The carrier twisted hard to port. Bora at the helm pushed the engines past every safety limit. In engineering, Jaewon watched temperature gauges climb into red zones. Components that should have failed 10 seconds ago somehow kept working through sheer force of will and exceptional maintenance. The Ravager volley missed the carrier by less than 50 meters. The near misses were enough to make the shields flicker and fail in several sections. Warning lights lit up across every console on the bridge. Shields at 8%, someone reported. Hull breaches on decks 7 through 12. Sealing emergency bulkheads. They couldn't take another hit like that. Not even close. Soul's pride to indomitable, Commander Yuna's voice came through the comm. We've engaged the second group. We're outnumbered but, we're holding. Civilian evacuation is at 75%. We need more time. Hyun looked at the tactical display. The Soul's Pride and the Busan were fighting 15 Ravager ships. They were faster and more maneuverable, but they were taking damage. The Soul's Pride showed multiple hull breaches. The Busan's shields were down to 15%. And, here, the Indomitable faced 14 more Ravagers and a flagship that was now very, very angry. Miho, Hyun said quietly. Tell me about that flagship. Weak points. Anything. Miho's fingers flew across his console. Its main reactor is heavily shielded, buried deep in the hull. But, Captain, look at this. He pulled up a schematic. Its command structure is different from normal ships. The bridge isn't in the center. It's forward, near those weapon ports that look like teeth. How certain are you? 80%. Maybe 85%. The communications array is definitely there and command centers need direct access to communications. Hyun studied the image. The bridge was near the front of the ship, protected by shields and armor but accessible if you could get close enough. If you were willing to get close enough. Jaewon, he called down to engineering. Worst case scenario. If we lost main power right now, how long before emergency backups kick in? There was a pause. Captain, emergency backups are for life support and basic systems only. We'd be dead in space. No weapons. No shields. No engines. We'd be a floating target. Why are you asking me this? Hyun didn't answer. Instead he opened a channel to the entire ship. All hands, this is the captain. What I'm about to order is going to sound insane. Trust me anyway. All non-essential personnel, get to the escape pods now. You have 2 minutes. Medical staff, damage control teams, and bridge crew remain at stations. Everyone else, go. That's an order. Across the ship, crew members looked at each other in confusion. Then, they started moving. They trusted their captain. If he said run, they ran. Escape pods began launching from the carrier, small craft fleeing toward the civilian stations. Sir, we just lost 200 crew members, the communications officer said. Her voice shook. They're alive, Hyun replied. That's what matters. Miho, I need a firing solution. Our position to the flagship's bridge. Single shot. Rail gun. Maximum velocity. Miho's hands froze over his controls. Sir, to get a clean shot at the bridge, we'd have to be within 200 meters. At that range, their point defense would shred us. I know. Calculate it anyway. Miho's face went pale as he realized what his captain was planning. But, he was a good officer. He did what he was told. Solution ready. We'd need a straight approach. No evasion. No dodging. Just a straight line from here to there. Jaiwan, Hyun said. Can you overload the main reactor? Controlled overload. Make it go critical but, give us 60 seconds before detonation. The comm was silent for 5 long seconds. When Jaiwan spoke, her voice was very quiet. Yes, sir. I can do that. But, Captain, you understand what you're asking. Once I start the overload, there's no stopping it. The ship will explode. Everyone still on board will die. I understand. Don't initiate yet. Wait for my mark. On the tactical display, the Ravager fleet was regrouping. The flagship's shields were regenerating. In another minute, they'd be back to full strength. The Ravagers had learned their lesson. They wouldn't let the humans get another lucky shot. Hyun opened a channel to the Soul's Pride. Yuna, status? We're holding but, barely. Her voice was strained. Busan just took a reactor hit. They're venting plasma but, still fighting. Evacuation is at 85%. Captain, we need 10 more minutes. 10 more minutes. Against 15 Ravager capital ships with a destroyer that was dying and, another that was running on auxiliary power. You'll have it, Hyun promised. He switched channels. Dane, how many fighters do we have left? 6, sir. 6 fighters out of 40 that launched. I need you to do something for me. Take your wing and, hit that flagship's sensor array. Right side, midship. You see it? I see it, sir. But, that's suicide. The point defense there is too thick. I know. Do it anyway. I need them blind for 30 seconds. There was a pause. Dane knew what he was being asked. Sacrifice himself and, his wings so the carrier could make its attack. No pilot wants to hear that order. But, every pilot knows someday they might receive it. Understood, sir. Gold wing, on me. We're going in. The 6 remaining fighters formed up and, accelerated toward the flagship. They came in from above, weaving through point defense fire. 2 fighters exploded before they got halfway there. A third lost its engine and, spun away, the pilot already dead. 3 fighters reached the target. They fired everything they had at the sensor array. Missiles. Guns. Everything. The explosions tore open the array in a shower of sparks and debris. For 30 seconds, maybe 40, that section of the flagship would be blind. All 3 fighters died in the attempt. Dane's last transmission was 7 words, target destroyed. Good luck, sir. Gold wing out. Now, Hyun said quietly. The Indomitable's engines roared to maximum power. The carrier pointed directly at the flagship and, accelerated. No evasion. No dodging. Just a straight line charge. The Ravagers saw it coming. Every ship opened fire. The space between the 2 vessels filled with weapons fire. But, the carrier was moving fast now, faster than anything that size should move. And, the flagship's blind spot meant its point defense couldn't track properly. The Indomitable took hits. Lots of hits. The shields failed completely. Armor plating vaporized. Entire sections of the hull were torn open. People died at their stations, doing their jobs until the end. On the bridge, sparks flew from exploding consoles. The main display cracked. Warning alarms became a solid scream of dying systems. 100 meters, Miho counted down. 75. 50. Jaiwan, initiate reactor overload, Hyun ordered. 60-second timer. Overload initiated, Jaiwan's voice was calm. Down in engineering, she set the controls and, then, stepped back. Nothing she could do now but, wait. See you on the other side, Captain. "25 meters," Miho called. "Mark for firing solution." The Indomitable's forward rail gun fired one last time. A single tungsten rod, accelerated to maximum velocity. At 20 meters range, the round traveled almost instantaneously. It hit the flagship's bridge section and punched through like it wasn't there. On the bridge of the Eternal Maw, the Ravager commander had 1 second to see the tungsten rod coming through his viewport. Then, he ceased to exist. The round continued through the bridge, through 3 more decks, and, finally, lodged in a main power conduit. Secondary explosions rippled through the flagship's forward section. "Direct hit," Miho reported. "Their bridge is gone. Command structure is disrupted. All remaining crew, abandon ship," Hyun ordered. "This is not a drill. You have 40 seconds. Go." The bridge crew ran. All of them except 3. Hyun stayed at his command chair. Miho stayed at his station. And, on the main comm, Jaiwan's voice came through from engineering. "I'm staying, Captain. Someone needs to make sure this reactor goes off exactly when and where it should." Hyun wanted to order her to leave. But, he knew she wouldn't. And, honestly, they needed her. So he just said, "Thank you, Lieutenant." Escape pods launched from every section of the carrier. Small craft fled in all directions, carrying the surviving crew to safety. On the tactical display, which was somehow still working, Hyun watched them go. 10 seconds, Jaiwan counted down. "The reactor is beautiful, you know. All that power. All that energy. It's almost sad to waste it." 5 seconds. Miho looked at his captain. "It's been an honor, sir." "The honor was mine, Lieutenant." 2 seconds. 1. The Indomitable's reactor went critical. The explosion was spectacular. It lit up that entire section of space like a newborn star. The carrier itself vaporized instantly. The flagship, already crippled and only 20 meters away, caught the full force of the blast. The Eternal Maw broke in half. Without their flagship and their commander, the Ravager fleet hesitated. That moment of confusion was all the soul's pride needed. Commander Yuna saw her opening and took it. "All ships, full attack," she ordered. "Hit them while they're disorganized." The death of the Eternal Maw changed everything. The Ravager fleet had operated as a unified force under absolute command for centuries. Their entire military doctrine depended on orders flowing from the flagship. Without it, they were individual ships without coordination or purpose. Commander Yuna saw the chaos and pressed the advantage. The Soul's Pride, running on backup power and held together mostly by hope and good engineering, accelerated toward the nearest Ravager cruiser. Her weapons officer, a young ensign who'd been promoted 3 times during the battle as his superiors died, fired every weapon they had left. The cruiser's shields were down, its attention focused on where the Indomitable had been. The Soul's Pride's rail guns hit it amidships. The cruiser didn't explode. It just split open, atmosphere and debris spilling into space. Another Ravager ship gone. The destroyer Busan was in worse shape. Its reactor was barely functional. Half its crew was dead. But, its captain, a woman named Yunji who'd been given command 15 minutes ago when the previous captain died at his post, refused to stop. She used the last of her ship's power to ram a Ravager destroyer. Both ships died in the collision, but she'd bought the civilians more time. The remaining frigate Gwangju, captained by a steady veteran named Su Hyun, used its speed to harass the Ravagers. It couldn't take them in a straight fight, but it didn't need to. It just needed to keep them confused and disorganized. Su Hyun's ship danced through the Ravager formation like a ghost, firing when opportunity presented and disappearing before return fire could find it. And, slowly, impossibly, the Ravagers began to break. The first ship to run was a cruiser that had taken heavy damage. Its acting commander, thrust into a position he'd never trained for, made the call to retreat. His ship jumped to hyperspace without waiting for orders that would never come. Others followed. One by one, then, in groups, the Ravager ships disengaged and fled. They'd come expecting easy prey and found something that bit back. Their fleet was shattered. Their legendary flagship was debris. Their commander was dead. Within 20 minutes of the Indomitable's sacrifice, the entire Ravager presence in the Helios Junction was gone. They left behind 18 destroyed warships and countless damaged vessels limping away to hyperspace. The human fleet had won. Commander Yuna stood on the bridge of the Soul's Pride, staring at the tactical display. The silence on the bridge was absolute. They'd won, but the cost was staggering. The Indomitable was gone. Captain Hyun was gone. Miho, Jaiwan, and hundreds of others were gone. The Busan was destroyed. The Taegu was destroyed. 40 fighter pilots had launched. 6 came back. Commander, her communications officer said quietly. The civilian stations are reporting. Final evacuation count is 94%. 15,200 people made it to safety. 15,200 lives. That's what they bought with their sacrifice. And, the fleet? Yuna asked. We have the Soul's Pride at 20% functionality. The Gwangju at 40%. 2 frigates out of service. 367 crew members in escape pods. Confirmed casualties are. The officer's voice broke. 912 dead or missing, ma'am. Almost 1,000 people. Out of a fleet of 6 ships that had started the day with 1,300 crew members. Yuna closed her eyes for just a moment. When she opened them, they were dry. There would be time to grieve later. Right now, she had a job to do. Get me the nearest Galactic Council frequency. Priority emergency channel. It took 10 minutes to establish contact. The Council fleet that had been destroyed earlier turned out to have survivors. Ships that had jumped away when the battle turned against them. Now they were limping back, expecting to find the Helios Junction in ruins. Instead, they found the human fleet holding position. Battered. Broken. But, still there. The Vexeran commander was one of the survivors. His flagship had been destroyed, but he'd made it to an escape pod. When his face appeared on the Soul's Pride's comm screen, his mandibles hung open in shock. Commander Yuna. You held them. The Ravagers? We did, she replied simply. How many ships did you lose? 3 capital vessels. Most of our fighters. 900 crew members. The Vexeran closed all 4 of his eyes. I'm sorry. I'm so very sorry. We should have been there. We should have listened. We underestimated you and, it cost you everything. It cost us a lot, Yuna agreed. But, the civilians survived. That's what Captain Hyun wanted. That's what we all wanted. Over the next hour, more Council ships arrived. Thornid rescue vessels. Kasser medical frigates. Even some of the smaller species who contributed to the coalition. They all expected to find a massacre. Instead, they found the aftermath of a battle the humans had won. The rescue operations took 3 days. Human crew members were recovered from escape pods scattered across the sector. Medical teams worked around the clock to treat the wounded. Engineers assessed the damage to the surviving ships. The Soul's Pride would need 6 months of repairs. The Gwangju would need 8. But, they'd survived. On the 4th day, the Galactic Council called for an emergency session. Every surviving member was required to attend. Commander Yuna, as the ranking human officer, represented Earth. She didn't want to go. She wanted to stay with her crew, her ship, her people. But duty called. The great hall above Vexera Prime was different now. The lights seemed dimmer. The delegates spoke in quiet voices instead of boasting about their accomplishments. War had reminded them all that they could die. Yuna entered the hall with no escort. Just herself in a uniform that showed scorch marks and hastily repaired damage. She walked to the speaking platform, aware that every eye in the chamber was on her. The Vexeran commander approached first. He didn't tower over her this time. Instead, he bent low in his species' gesture of deepest respect. His mandibles clicked in a rhythm that Yuna's translator said meant honor to the fallen. "Commander Yuna," he said. "On behalf of the Vexeran people and our military, I apologize. We mocked you. We dismissed you. We sent you to what we thought was a safe sector because we believed you couldn't handle real combat. We were wrong. Catastrophically, shamefully wrong." A Thornid representative approached next. The crystal being's surface showed cracks from battle damage. "Your captain and crew did what our fleets could not. They faced impossible odds and held the line. They saved thousands of lives at the cost of their own. This is heroism beyond what our cultures believed possible." One by one, species that had laughed at the human delegation weeks ago came forward to apologize. To express gratitude. To acknowledge that they'd been blind. Finally, it was Yuna's turn to speak. She stood at the podium and looked out at the assembled council. When she spoke, her voice was clear and hard. "You laughed at us. All of you. You saw our small fleet and assumed we were weak. You sent us away to patrol duty because you thought we couldn't contribute to real combat. You measured our worth by the size of our ships and the number of our guns." The chamber was silent. "You were wrong. Humans don't measure strength the way you do. We don't count tonnage or firepower. We measure strength by will. By determination. By what we're willing to sacrifice for what we believe in." She paused, letting that sink in. Captain Hyun gave his life. Lieutenant Miho gave his life. Lieutenant Jaiwan gave her life. 900 crew members gave their lives. They did it for 16,000 people they'd never met. They did it because it was right. Because someone had to stand in the gap. Because when we say we'll hold the line, we mean it. Her voice grew harder. "You want to know why humans succeeded where your fleets failed? It's not technology. It's not tactics. It's that when we commit to something, we don't break. We don't run. We don't calculate the odds and decide it's not worth it. We make a promise and we keep it, even when keeping it costs us everything." She looked directly at the Vexeran commander. "You asked how we won. That's how. We decided to win and we refused to accept any other outcome. That's what humans do. That's what we've always done." The silence in the chamber lasted for 10 full seconds. Then, the Vexeran commander began clicking his mandibles. Not in mockery this time. In respect. In recognition. Other species joined in with their own gestures of honor. The Thornids resonated at frequencies that meant acknowledgement of superior force. The Kasser bowed their heads. When the gestures of respect finally ended, the council's lead diplomat stepped forward. She was a small being from a species Yuna didn't recognize. But her voice carried authority. "The Galactic Council recognizes that we failed in our duty. We allowed pride and assumption to cloud our judgment. We sent Earth's fleet to patrol duty when they should have been in command positions. This was a grave error that cost lives." She turned to face the full assembly. "Effective immediately, Earth is granted a permanent seat on the Security Council. All future military operations will include human tactical input at the command level. The Terran Defense Force is requested to lead the coalition against Ravager incursions. Resources will be allocated to expand Earth's fleet to whatever size and capability humanity deems necessary. She looked back at Yuna. We cannot undo our mistakes. We cannot bring back those who died. But, we can ensure their sacrifice meant something. We can learn from what they taught us. Humans fight differently than we do. You fight with something we'd forgotten was important. Heart. Will. Refusal to surrender. The vote was taken. Unanimous approval. Earth would no longer be dismissed. No longer mocked. The galaxy had learned a harsh lesson about underestimating humans. Yuna accepted the Council's decisions with a simple nod. Then, she said something that would be quoted in military academies across the galaxy for generations. We don't need your apologies. We don't need your respect. What we need is for you to remember. Remember what happened here. Remember what humans will do when pushed. Remember that size doesn't determine strength. Will does. Remember Captain Hyun and everyone who died at Helios Junction. And, remember this above all else, humans don't quit. She turned and walked out of the chamber. Behind her, the delegates sat in silence. 3 months later, Commander Yuna stood on the observation deck of the new TDF Indomitable. The Council had built it as a memorial and a replacement. It was bigger than the original. More powerful. Better armed. But, it carried the same name because some things should never be forgotten. The crew called it Indomitable for short, just like the old ship. And, on its bridge, above the captain's chair, was a plaque. It listed every crew member who died at the Helios Junction. 912 names. At the top, in larger letters, Captain Hyun. Lieutenant Miho. Lieutenant Jaiwan. They'd laughed at the tiny fleet. Then, a Terran ship arrived and showed them what tiny really meant. Not the size of the fleet. But, the size of their mistake. The galaxy learned. They paid the price. And, they would never laugh again.